Dealing with trauma with kids is complicated. It's not black and white. Handling your emotions when kids are so broken is probably the most challenging thing.
Lots of these kids come into care with trauma, neglect, developmental disabilities and delays. You see things like toileting delays and problems, communication struggles. We've had children that would become very angry and aggressive because they couldn't communicate their needs. And that behavior can make it very difficult to provide care because it's behavior meant to push you away to protect themselves in a lot of cases.
I'm not equipped to deal with the trauma that this young person has experienced. We have to help that little person pick up the pieces when a family member that they met thinking this might be my forever home walks away.
I think to a degree you deny the fact that there's grief and loss attached to it in order to cope. You tell yourself, well, I signed up for this. I should be okay with this. Why am I not okay with this? And then you struggle at times to be able to recognize, okay, why am I feeling this way? What's going on for myself? These are little kids. That's why it hurts, is because what they're experiencing should have never happened in the first place. And I'm sitting here cleaning up the pieces, trying to make them feel better.
I'm Judy. I'm a retired educational assistant. My husband and I started fostering about 40 years ago. We've had 50 to 60 children in that time, and right now we're on a break. When we have kids come into our home, we recognize right away that there's a lot of loss. They've had to leave the families they know. So navigating their grief and their loss is hard, especially when we don't know what they've been through to get to our place. We're finding more and more that children are pulled from school or homes without being told at all. Some of them cry for days. Some are outside screaming. We had one who just stood on the kitchen and just banged his head on the wall for minutes. It's hard to see the children going through this kind of pain. When we find out what has happened to the children, I get angry inside. You still have to parent the child, love the child, because it's not the child's fault what has happened. Their behavior doesn't bother me as much until I know more about why. And so what their pain is, then that really bothers me, because I just, how does that happen to a child? And then go back a step, and how are the parents in that much pain that they transgress this to their children?
My name is Sharon. I was a clinical social worker for about 45 years. I have spent a lot of time in the mental health addictions and trauma delivery for kids and their families who are in need. When we think of loss, most often people go to grief. They're different. Loss, for anyone, is the loss of something or someone significant, and it has an attachment for them, a value, a high value. It may be a loss that it's permanent. It may be that it's reduced. There's less of that person, that thing in your life. Grief is a very specific experience we will all have in our life. It's most often attached to death. There's no return, and it's an ending. That piece, we can go through a process of grieving what has ended. Loss is not limited to grief, specifically to death. It is the loss of someone significant, like the parent you no longer live with, the home you no longer live with.
For a lot of kids in care, it is also a lot of times the grief of losing oneself and culture and family and going to somewhere completely new and different and feeling scared and vulnerable because it's such a different environment. And what that does a lot for the brain itself is it can cause high levels of stress and anxiety, and which can even reiterate into depression. And remaining in that fight or flight response can affect your daily life because you're in constant fear of something happening.
When it is exposed to a stressful event, that stressful event then can turn into what we call trauma. It can be a single event, it can be a series of events that together or part of become traumatic. And they become that traumatic effect when the brain reacts. And there are 3 parts of the brain that react, and think of it as an overload. It's too much input, and that electrical current can short circuit, disconnect. The brain can essentially burn out. It'll be so hypersensitive that your emotional response, you will feel like you cannot control. Your physical response, you will feel pain, you will feel fear, you will feel cold, you will feel heat, and it will be excessive. In the meantime, your brain is looking for a way to support you, to help you. But in the face of that traumatic event or those events, those 3 parts of your brain have come forward and said, it's too much. The things you might see: quiet, withdrawn, doesn't make friends, doesn't hold friendships, will not take physical affection. They may not be sleeping well. They may have screaming fits, breaking things. They may withdraw and then overly seek attention. You'll see more of or less of behaviors that are a way of communicating that they are in distress. And no one child, I want to emphasize, will be the same, because they're trying to protect, they're trying to defend, they're trying to survive on instinct. They have nothing to put that against. So they're just adapting the best they can.
So when children have started expressing themselves and you feel that the grief is starting to come out, it isn't a fast process, and it takes time. If you sit with the child that does acknowledge their grief, that's what you're telling them, that you're accepting their pain, it's okay to feel it. Some kids don't want you anywhere near. You get a feel for that, you get a read. I think entering into a child's grief with them, it shows the child that you're there with them and that it's okay to be sad, it's okay to be crying, you're comfortable with it. It can be like a bonding experience, and that's what you want. You want to start bonding, you want to start a relationship, and it could be that no one else has done that.
I think it's important for foster parents to have the emotional awareness of grief and loss because it's going to be a very good tool for them to use while supporting their foster child in ways of understanding where they're coming from. As human beings, we really just strive to always fix things. When someone tells us a problem that they're going through, we right away want to fix things. But the thing is that this is a long journey. And, I always try to recommend to my foster parents that you won't be able to heal this child in one day. This is a lifetime journey. You're going to be walking through them, teaching them, guiding them, building that foundation for them to heal. And that takes time.
The urge of human beings is to want to fix, to want to act, to want to do something. And above all, to do something so that the pain goes away. A foster caregiver having a child enter their home, it's not a matter of if there's going to be a response by the child, it's when. Some of the language about trauma, and there's a lot, you might hear the word triggered. Think of that as some experience, see here, that the child is having has caused a reaction or an action by them. Particularly for foster caregivers coming in, educate yourself on the science of trauma, the neurobiology of trauma, so you understand what's happening at the brain level, therefore at the emotional level, and what you see in the behavior level. Second thing, build your support system before any child comes to you and maintain that support system. What's that look like? Meet other foster caregivers. Start to engage. Have coffee chats. Have a phone call. Above all, when you see that child's triggered response, a see here response that you are observing, resist the urge to fix it. Be present with them. Let them know you're there. By your presence, they're safe. And let them go through that reaction with you present and be there for them after.
I think I was always afraid of, like, I'm not a child psychologist, I'm not a mental health therapist, so what if I say the wrong thing? What if I damage them further? After all these years, I've realized you can't hurt them, but you can't do more damage by sitting with them and just sharing. Like, they need you. Just be with them. And often that's when things can come out. As they settle down and realize that you are with them, they're often ready to talk, even just in little snippets. And if you weren't there with them, that opportunity would have been lost.
Being a foster caregiver is just doing more of what you naturally do, being a parent. Your willingness and your ability to be with the child and give them a platform. Yes, the intention is you are a temporary time in their life. You provide a respite and a place where your consistency gives them space to breathe and to process how they manage their life. And this temporary time of these children being in your care is a way for them to learn how to do pain, how to look at it and start to understand what it's connected to. They can manage the situation they're in, not by their own choosing.